are back again. We've come back to make another hangout. Thought that you needed to hear what is in this book, which Nigel helped this person get this book going, didn't you? We helped with proofreading and stuff, weren't you? We can't prove any of this is real, but I've been saying to Nigel that something happened about late 1800s, early 1900s. I just knew it. I knew it with everything that we were going through and how things changed a bit, but that's all I could do was say I know it, but I don't know why. And then it's in this book.
Yeah, this book, and I think we're going to do this as a bit of a teaser, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a teaser, everyone.
I don't want to jump the gun. I'm pretty sure that we're going to be able to make this book available for everyone. But it's a book that's been put together by a fellow called Jamie Lee. Now, many people listening to this will know Jamie from A Plain Truth. And I think he's on A Plain Truth 7 or A Plain Truth 8 or something now. But he basically put this book together earlier on this year. And he kindly sent it to me, and I offered to edit it for him. But, you know, after 3 days of editing, I realized that this is just going to take me forever. So he kind of said, well, look, it's a free book anyway. So, you know, if there's a few typos in there, big deal. So he ended up putting it up on his website. And, you know, it's a big book. It's 340 odd pages. There's a lot of information in there. But when I say
we can't prove everything, but we want to know the truth, and maybe this is more of the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the important point to make at the beginning is that Jamie hasn't so much quote unquote written this book. He's written a lot of it, but for the most part, he's essentially put it together. So there's a lot of work that he's included in this book that come from other people. One of the most prolific revisionist historians is a Russian guy called Anatoly Fomenko. Now, I've read a lot of Fomenko's work, and it is pretty serious stuff. And if you went on Fomenko's site and looked at all his volumes of works, and you spent 12 hours a day reading it, it would probably take you the best part of a year. There is that much information, so it's not really for the faint-hearted. But there's a few things in this book that I'd like to highlight. It's called The One World Tartarians, the greatest civilization ever to be erased from history. Now, in this hangout, I really just want to highlight what or some of what Jamie's put together in what he calls the intro deduction.
Can I just say that for everybody that moaned, you know, like, I did have some comments on Facebook where people going, "Oh, you're ridiculous talking about that. Don't be so stupid. They haven't done this. They haven't done that." All I can see is that on the footage, they're wiping out the black people in it, black soldiers, which were true, because this book's going to prove that, this book says that there were thousands of them. So that bit is true. They just wiped them out of the videos.
Yeah. So I'm going to start.
Okay, wait a minute.
I'm not going to read all of this.
I've got to stop the video in a second to get over there. Are we going to the book then?
Yeah. If you highlight if you open the book and scroll down to the title of the book,
yeah,
The One World Tartarians.
Right, there you go. That's what it's called. One World Tartarians, the greatest civilization ever to be erased from history.
Yep. Now scroll down to the intro deduction. And that's where we're going to start.
Gone too far. Hang on, let me get back up there. Oh. On the computer, it's a bit different. It goes really quickly.
According to the PDF, it's page 13. There isn't a number 13 on the page, but it's page 13.
Okay, I'm just going through it now. 6, was it 13? 10. There we are. I'm on it now. Oh, gone past it. 12. Oh my goodness, let's just do it by click. Here we go, coming up now. Right, there you go, Nigel.
Okay.
Nigel's going to
So when
read
you're
this
ready,
because we've read some of this, but there's just too much to go through in one go, so that's why it's a teaser. But anyway, you're going to read it on them.
okay. So we're starting on the intro deduction. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's a beautiful Tartarian building. And you know, it starts off like a fairy story. Once upon a time, there was a highly advanced civilization, today known as Great Tartaria. She was disappeared. That is not a typo. Not she disappeared. She was disappeared. In other words, she was made to disappear from our history books less than a century ago, which is exactly what Karen's been talking about. Its vestiges are still everywhere. This civilization dominated technologies more advanced than the present ones. Its geopolymer concrete was eternal and grew stronger over time. Its gigantic iron and glass structures, surmounted by domes, and that's something else that we'll get into later on, and metal needles were present on every continent. Associated with Mercury, they distributed free atmospheric energy to everyone. Its towers and railway stations are still in operation today. Unfortunately, the technology of free energy from the ether was destroyed and imprisoned, and old technology reintroduced, like cables and wires to distribute energy and make handsome profits. So I'm going to skip the next bit. I want to go down to the next page, which is page 2. And it's talking about the United States is defined as a federal corporation under US Code 3002, Section 15. The Virginia Company was turned into the United States during the non-occurring Revolutionary War by the Freemasonic founding fathers. And you can see there, I refer you to the United States Code. Note the capitalization. This all connects to the straw man. It all connects to the name on our birth certificate, driving license, passport, etc. So let's just scroll down a bit further to page 3. Now here we can see.
You're not going to read all that rest of it out.
No, I'm gonna. Some of that is not that important right now. I wanna highlight this podcast on some of what I consider to be important or more important. I mean, it's all important, but as I say, this is a teaser. So
anybody that wants to read page 1, the rest of the page is up. Those that want to read it, just stop the hangout and look at that page, because Nigel doesn't want to read it out right now. So there you go. It talks about all the names, all the things there. So just stop the page and look at it. So what page are we going to?
Okay, we're on the next page, which is page 3.
Well,
yeah, of course, anybody can just pause the video and read it if they want to.
We missed page 2 then. We've missed, I think we should just quickly look at page 2, and it talks about a few things he's put in there.
I think that was page 2, Karen.
Well, you didn't read the whole of page 1 out and the whole of page 2 out.
No, all I read on page 2 was the United States being defined as a federal corporation. That's page 2.
Well, I must have got lost then. I was just obviously dreaming. Anyway, we're slowly going through it now. There you go. Oh, now we're on page 3. So it's a bit of a jump there because it's quite a big book.
Oh, it's 342 pages. Yeah. So what you should be looking at the top right-hand corner of page 3 is the bloodlines. Now, this is a book written by Fritz Springmeier. It should be available online, free of charge. If it's not, for whatever reason, I've got it. I've got a PDF, so I'm more than happy to send it out to anybody that wants it. But what's important are the 12 bloodlines in white, and then the big one is number 13, which is the Merovingian. And we all know who that is, don't we, Karen? Merovingian bloodline. Yeah.
What's that?
That's your favourite person in all the world.
Oh, who's that then?
The Queen. The Queen.
Right.
The royal family. Yeah. So this page begins. The NWO also rewrote his story during the revision of history during the epic reset between the mid-1800s until the 1930s. That is how recent this was. And this is what you've been saying for a long time.
Just to say that the Ottoman Empire came to an end in 1925 and the Commonwealth started in the 1930s.
Yep. Yeah, this is exactly, this basically backs up everything that you've been saying, Karen. So during the epic reset between the mid-1800s until the 1930s, when Court Hopjuden, aka Mr. Rockefeller, along with the Rothschild Red Shield, began the many stories of the Big Bang, evolution, and the history of religious myth and law. So they actually created all these stuff that we taught about in school. They created Charles Darwin. He never existed in reality. They were the Ashkenazis who were conscripted by the Vatican to be allowed to make all the money and all the have all the fame, as long as the Vatican, the Jesus, and the 13 bloodlines that are highlighted there would be provided with information and power. This is why the Vatican set up confessionals. This is why Catholics go to church. I've got a confession. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And you sit and tell this guy all your personal secrets. They run a worldwide spy agency called the Entity, which owns and controls all of them. CIA, NSA, MI6, the whole lot. It's all part of their OWO, stated in Latin on the back of the US dollar bill. So the real Old World Order were the benevolent Tartarians. One of their only primary...
It doesn't explain at the moment. We haven't worked out how long the Tartarian and the Russians ruled everything, where we came in and ruled everything. It doesn't quite explain all that, does it? Or who was there before? But we're just doing 100 years ago, basically.
Well, Anatoly Fomenko, if you read what he's come up with, essentially, he's come up with that there is no written quote unquote history prior to the 11th century. So how long Tartaria actually existed before the takeover, I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think anybody knows, and I don't think...
They've destroyed it, haven't they, anyway? They've destroyed a lot of it, although now we realise that the First World War, which was 18? Because of the 14. Ending of the Turkish ones, what are they? The Ottoman Empire, and all that going on, they obviously needed that war to cover up them destroying Tartaria or the end of it. But what I'm really shocked is that Nicholas was a Romanov, I think that's right, and he was murdered supposedly in about 1918. Yeah, at that time they were taking over America, and I told you on a map I saw it said Greenland. America was Greenland, and they changed it to America only 100 years ago.
Yep.
So it's all a bit, there's a lot in there, and some of it doesn't quite add up yet, but it's giving a general, well, you know, generally it does, but it's not all add up quite yet, does it? Because we don't know what was...
Well, no, but as we go through this book,
when we were born, Nigel, it only happened about 50 years before. So I just wonder what's going on right now then, because they give you all this crap that they give putting us in right now. They're obviously doing something completely different right now.
Well, actually, they're not. They're repeating. It's rinse and repeat. But the information that I've got on there, we might have to look at putting it on another platform, because there's no way that the platform that we're on now will allow this information to get out. But we'll cross that bridge later. And so there's a little question here that I can't quite get my head around. The old world order were the benevolent Tartarians. One of their only primary directives was, what you take from nature, what you take back from nature, you give back more. What you take from nature, you give back more. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but
maybe that's to do with the fact that it's hard for people to get their heads round. But with the bit you read me, which I want you to read that bit out as well, Nigel, even though it comes out of this book, I want you to read that bit out as well. But they basically had cold fusion weapons. So yeah. That's taking things out of the nature, isn't it?
Yes. Well, their nature was based on ISIS. Now, one has to remember, and we've covered this in previous podcasts and that we've done, that when you look at the Bible, when you go to Genesis, the word Genesis means the genes of ISIS. That's where the word comes from. That is the etymology of the word Genesis, the genes of ISIS. So their nature was based on Isis, the moon goddess, who created and provided for all. We can only conclude, given the extremely similar structures we see throughout the world, that all lived in common language and were all related in common thought, intention, and design. They had healing centers for animals. They had passive relations with all life because they had advanced their consciousness to emanate love and benevolence to all. The flag was of a griffin, which was a real animal.
Can I say something, Nigel? What did they want to ruin all this then? If we were living in harmony and peace, which I wasn't sure whether Tartaria was some great big ogre force, but if we were living in such harmony, why would they want to destroy it?
Well, they didn't destroy it. The invaders destroyed it. Which,
but we're
again,
the invaders, aren't we?
No. The invaders were the Atlanteans, in my opinion. I emailed you a picture called the Blue Men of Minch. I'll when I touch on that, maybe you can throw it up on the screen. But I just want to go through a little bit more of this. We can only surmise the entire Tartarian people were destroyed when the NWO learned how to use the Tartary technology and use it to destroy the entire culture and erase their existence. So what they did was they took the free energy technology and they basically turned it against the Tartarian people. The energy was benevolent, and the invaders turned it around and made it malevolent and used it to destroy instead of to create. If you look carefully at the photos and images in this book, and that this book is beautifully illustrated, as I'll give you a highlight in a few minutes, you will see these massive buildings that would mean there were hundreds of millions, maybe tens of billions of Tartarians that were eliminated when the healing technology was used to destroy. We find millions of bones buried under cities and massive insane asylums where they likely imprisoned the adult Tartars after they had separated from the children to be sold for slave labor and shipped on the foundling trains or the orphan trains. And, you know, anybody listening to this should be familiar with.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I can't believe it, because it's just a hunch I had with what it was is when I got to the bit about when we went over to America and they segregated everybody in these big buildings they had, and then they took the children. It was just a feeling I got. I was doing it with James Brockhurst. We were looking at things and going, look at all these buildings. There's hundreds of them. How could they be there when we just got there? And it's just a feeling you got. And then there's the orphan trains. And you think, well, there's got to be a connection. And instead of going to some big historian, I went to people that were looking at, well, this is a letter that my relative sent me. So you were looking at history, but through people's personal journeys. So that's how I got to where I did, because I didn't listen to the big one. Right.
All right. Can you just scroll down to page 4, and you'll see the famous doctor in the left-hand picture.
Oh, him.
So this whole thing, and this is why one of the reasons we're doing this, guys, for you, everybody listening to this, because it all connects with exactly what's going on today.
So anybody who wants to read that page, just stop the video and read the page. If you want to read the rest of page 3, as Nigel's missed that bit out. But we can't do it all. There's so many pages. This is a teaser.
Oh, listen, I mean, this podcast could turn into 3 or 4 hours if I don't skip down to some of the important
parts. Read that bit you sent me in that letter. Was that just that?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that at the end. But there's a certain point that I want to get to in this before we switch over to there. So we should now be on page 4. What we see unfolding today likely genocided the Tartars under the spiritual mind and body control of L and S. Some of these mind controlled are called blue bloods due to their blood being of higher copper content than non-Rh negative bloodline humans.
Oh, I knew it was to do with bloodlines. It had to be something to do with blood, because we've been talking about that with a few other people. Blood.
Well, at this point in the podcast, Karen, if you wouldn't mind, later on when you edit this, throw up the picture that I sent you of the blue men.
Wait a minute, let me go there. So that's the picture that Nigel wanted to bring up. Okay, so what that is basically talking about in that picture is this is the invasion. I'm pretty sure, according to my own research, these are Atlanteans. These are the Rh negative blue blood. Their blood has a higher copper content. Our blood is rich in iron. Theirs is rich in copper. Just want to say that when you look at the veins in your hands, they're blue. The blood is blue until it hits the air. So we have the blue blood. They have more, but we have. Oh, it's not. It's kind of blue, isn't it? Maybe a bit green, actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, like your veins look blue. But this is not saying their blood is blue. It's basically saying that they have a higher copper content. Okay.
Okay, is that it? Is that all we want to show?
Yeah, now you can go back to page 4.
Okay, wait a minute. Right, we're back on page 4 now.
Okay, so the Rh negative bloodline allows genealogical DNA traits to be passed on, whereas any contamination of positive bloodlines corrupts the purity of their bloodlines. Most are not even aware that all US presidents have negative blood and their lineage can be traced back to who? Oh, King Charles II. Now, what were we talking about before, Karen?
I told you, the English run everything.
Yeah. But do you remember the podcast that we did when we were talking about the beast system in the year, what we know is 1666, which was actually 666, and it came into being during the reign of King Charles II. And when they created the SQV Trust, him and the Pope.
That's just after Elizabeth I. But I still think then, because I took out the War of the Roses, looking at was any of that true? But it must go back to the War of the Roses, which was the end of the 1400s. Because something happened then with all the griffins and the reds and the whites, and there was something going on there. And then we get an illegitimate king, Edward V.
Well,
and it goes Henry VII. Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, now we're into the 1500s.
Yeah, and this is when it all happened, in my opinion. This is when it all happened. It happened in the 15th century, which is one of the reasons why 1492 is so important in American history, Christopher Columbus.
Well, that's not true, is it? It's something, but it's not him.
No, the story of Christopher Columbus is not true, but the date is important, in my opinion, because basically the beginning of the takeover happened in the 15th century, according to my own research. So I just found it really interesting that all the American presidents, their bloodlines, their lineage can be traced back to King Charles II, and it was King Charles II that actually birthed the 666 beast, what we know as the beast system. And we've already covered that, so we don't need to go over it again. But throughout the world, invading forces that defeated Tartaria appropriated, which means took over or stole their palaces and red power stations, which we can still see today. You drive past a power station and you'll see chimneys that have got red stripes. They're white chimneys with red stripes. They took over the universities, museums, theatres, banks, prefectures, chambers of commerce, stock exchange, churches, high schools, courts, banks, post offices. The list just goes on and on, as well as cathedrals, which were cathode rails, which is the negative part of the electronic grid system. The anodes are the positive, and they're the ones that have the dome. So all the buildings, what we today call mosques, and of course other buildings that have a dome, they were the anodes. They were the positive in this whole free energy grid system. And the cathedrals with the spires. Remember that picture that I sent you, Karen? That black cathedral? Cathode. They're the cathodes.
Right.
So they continue to paint the structures that extract energy from the ether with the same colours as Tartaria. And they keep destroying. Tartaria was the whole world. Asia, Africa, Europe, Oceania, Americas. They were all part of a single high civilization, and the architecture focused on the extraction of magnetic critical energy. Great Tartary was then divided into civilizational categories like the Ottoman Empire, Byzantine, Ross. These changes were then archived into the likes of the throne room of the Grand Kremlin Palace in Moscow, the National Archives of Britain, and the Library of Congress in Washington. The parasites also...
Can I just say that I showed you, which is on a video, I don't know if it's the maps one, I don't think I've put it out, but in the 1500s, America was called Greenland. That makes sense why it was called something else.
Yeah. The parasites also interrupted the astronomical clocks of Tartaria. Now, this is why, in my opinion, this is why they added the 1,000 years, because they wanted to throw off the astronomical clocks. And this is one of the reasons why Anatoly Fomenko's work is so important, because everything that he's done, he's gone back through history and he's used astronomy. And this, he not only shows that 1,000 years were added, but also another 333 years and possibly another 100 years at another point in time. So they basically buggered about with the astronomical clocks, and the way they did it was by adding years to the, when we went from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, which is the one we use today. These clocks were complex calculating machines. They used terms like computers, which of course is Latin for computer, and how to and to operate them sophisticated. And to operate them, I should be at them through sophisticated mathematical knowledge. Oh, sorry. And to operate them, sophisticated mathematical knowledge was required.
Are we on the same page?
Yeah, we're on page 4. We're next to the clock.
Right. Okay.
They invented the heliocentric model and the Copernicus character, among many others, to be able to recreate the history of humanity and erase traces of their recent crimes and destruction of the great civilization. To be very clear, Tartaria was the whole world, with a unified language and design. How could the many pyramids found all over the world incorporate the same thoughts and designs if the Tartars were not all connected somehow? Valid question. So I want to scroll down now, Karen. He's talking about where are the design plans, architecture. I want to scroll down. Oh, and this, I'm on page 6. Can you scroll down to page 6?
On page 5, looks like the sun's coming out of the land.
Yeah, as I say, I don't want to. I've got a lot to get through, so if you wouldn't mind scrolling down to page 6, there's just one comment that I want to make.
Yeah, I'm going there, but I'm just saying the sun's coming out of the land.
Yeah.
Right. I'm there.
Okay. Just look at the first line. They always had a water fountain nearby. Now, as you know, I grew up in the UK. I grew up in Coventry. And right in the middle of Coventry city centre, you had a statue of Lady Godiva, but more importantly, there was a huge fountain. It was huge. I'm not sure if it's still there. It's been a long time since I've been, but it was huge. And it was just, we were told, for decorative purposes, which now we know is a lot more than just decoration.
Do you know what I saw? It was actually on a BBC programme. It talked about in Italy how all the sewage and everything, all the pipes where the water went underneath, they all linked up and it did all the fountains. And then the BBC programme was saying, well, it's obviously a lot older and they were coated in something. Had to be for it to last. These waterways still function, these waterfalls. It's the same time as this.
Yeah, and they were far more important. They were not just decorative. They were far, far more important. Right, I'd like to move on. If you wouldn't mind scrolling down to page 9.
So we're not reading any of that then?
No, not now. We can come back to something.
If you want to stop the video and look at what is written, just stop it anywhere you want. Just read it. Right, we're going on to what, page 7?
No, page 9. And scroll down page 9 until you reach the heading, what if? Because there are 30 bullet points here, and I really want to go through all of them. And then I'll get on to the emails that I sent you, the sections of this book that I sent to you earlier today.
I'm just scrolling. I don't want to go too fast, because if I go too fast, I'll go through hundreds of pages. I have to click it one by one. Right, here we go. Just getting them up. So if you want to stop at any of it and read it as it goes through, you're welcome. Right, what if? I'm there.
Yeah, by Marcia. Okay. All right, so number 1, you know that man did not, I don't really want to say it, that the T didn't sink under the command of the owners of the ship pretended it sank just to receive the insurance. The purpose was never to disappear with some tycoons who opposed the creation of the Fed because they owned it and therefore did not need to die. We know the Fed is a private central bank created in 1913 for currency issuance, inflation control and interest rates, and thus responsible for all the world economic depressions and the real US debt of 75 trillion. I read the other day that right now the worldwide debt is 277 trillion US dollars, which is probably another reason why we're going through what we're going through now, because they don't need to crash it, they just have to. You know, the attacks on the Lusitania, PH, and the incident in the GOT were planned to justify the entry into certain Ws. Mr. H was a creation of Wall Street to kill the largest number of Russians and Germans and boost the H, which we know is a myth. The creation of a false flag called the, you can see it there, gave rise to prejudice and a new world. Can't say that word.
What number are we reading? What bulletin are we reading?
I'm on number 3. I'm on number 3. Which would be very useful for wearing wolves into the skin of lambs. Number 4, the sumptuous Lusitania, built by the Tartarians, was the fastest Atlantic crossing vessel and was taken by the parasites and their agents. The ship had its engines fully powered by electricity from the ether and so had to sink 2 times. by the parasites to be converted and reappear years later, less a chimney and under new names. The Lusitania was the T, the RMS Majestic, and of course the RMS QE. Number 5,
so suddenly there's the Queen Elizabeth.
Yep. Number 5, you know that a certain person was taken to work in the US through Operation Clip, and that the following person was the CIA director and created the T network responsible for attacks since 1980. And of course, our friend Churchill. You know, at some point, people need to just Google or just do a search for Winston Churchill and his quote unquote wife. You'd actually be surprised. He caused tens of millions of deaths, and no fire knocked down the TT. Number 6, you can read this for yourself. I've got to be careful. I don't want Karen to get a strike. There were no in that country. Probably better that people read this themselves, Karen, rather than me read it out. What do you think?
What, we just talk for a few minutes while...
No, I'm just saying, I think we should pause for a minute and let people read number 6, because, you know, there's a lot of stuff there that might cause a problem if I read it out.
Okay, just read number 6.
Okay, so people can read number 6 for themselves, I think. And I'm sure they'll understand why. Number 7, you know that traces of smoke in the sky contain aluminium going straight to your lungs. The following 2 words mean pesticides and hidden destruction. The profusion of antennas modify magnetic resonance to cause disease. And what we're seeing now is the next sentence, that the TV, what they distribute and call it north, east, west, and south. Again, people can. I've got to be careful with this reading out this stuff. People can read the rest of number 7. Next one's number 8. What if the magnificent civilization of Tartaria was destroyed with the help and planning of inhuman shadowy forces? What if the history we're taught is a gigantic soap opera fraud? Well, it is. We know that. Phantom dynasties, events displaced in time, and thousands of years that didn't exist. We know that. What if the Middle Ages were actually a Tartarian golden age that ended just 100 years ago? It did. You've proved that, Karen. Haven't you? Karen?
Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted myself. Well, I don't mean to be right.
I thought I dropped out. So
no,
we're on number 8.
I didn't mean it to be. It's just the collection of information, just the little bits that I was getting, and I just, you only find this out if you do your own research. But it's all sort of bits and pieces.
Well, what you're saying there is so important, because I don't want to sound disrespectful to any of our listeners, but a lot of people, they just want to be spoon-fed. And again, I don't mean that disrespectful. I've got a mate in Australia who's always asking me questions. He just won't go out and do his own research. But a lot of what I'm reading and what we're going through now in this book is essentially reinforces stuff that I've researched and stuff that Karen's researched, totally independently of each other. We've come to the same conclusions, and then when we read this book, it's kind of like, wow, yeah, I knew that, because we've done our own research. So people still need to do their own research up to a point, rather than just relying on people like Karen and me and, you know, James and Claudio and Amy and Gillian and, you know, all the other people that you listen to. Yeah, we're not going to lead you down the garden path, but at the end of the day, people still need to go and do their own research.
Number 9 is quite profound, considering it all ties it all in there, doesn't it? All in number 9.
Yeah, it does. But I was just trying essentially to elaborate on what if history taught in schools is a giant soap opera fraud. It is. So, okay, let's move on to number 9. What if the defeat of Great Tartaria was recorded in the official history under the names of the fall of Troy, the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of Constantinople, dissolution of the Ottoman Empire? There was another one that, Karen, we're pretty much the same age. When we did history at school, we would have been taught about the dissolution of the monasteries. That's another something else that's not included in this list. The wars for independence, the collapse of the Qing dynasty here in China, the downfall of the Russian Empire, the defeat of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Is all this thing about Rome and all that? It's only 100 years ago.
Yep. What if the Great Flood happened 150 years ago? According to my own research, I can't debunk that, but I kind of don't agree with it. I think the Great Flood happened in the 15th century, as depicted in that Blue Men of Minch picture that you put up earlier. But the mud flood, you know, that was around that time.
Different technology, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what if it happened 150 years ago and the world was culturally and technologically much more advanced than today? It was. If unknown parasites generated the cataclysma and took advantage of chaos to seize power, they did. There's no what if. Between 1865 and 1876, our ancient civilization wrecked under waves of more than 300 meters. And now the buildings have their first floor buried under meters of sand and mud, whose vestige to this day can be easily spotted in all cities all over the world. Number 11, what if the Etruscan, Inca, Mayan, Chinese emperors, and Egypt pharaohs all coexisted in the Middle Ages, or what we know is the Middle Ages, with all other great civilizations to form a single harmonious culture? Well, according to Fomenko, the biblical 12 tribes of Israel are exactly this. They were all Tartarians. Etruscans, Incas, Mayans, Chinese emperors, Egyptians, they all formed essentially the biblical 12 tribes of Israel. It's insane how it all comes together. Right, number 12, Karen, which is on the next page, page 11 we're on now.
Right.
Now, I disagree with this because, and this is Fomenko, this is not James. I disagree with this for reasons that we've spoken about, Jesus being he's us. But there could have been a certain person that fell into that same category, could have been
I told you about this hangout we had, and nothing was written down. And what it is through the stars and that, this person said that Jesus or Jesus was born in the 1100s.
Well, that's exactly what Fomenko said. Fomenko said he was born.
It might have been that person, but it's
Yeah. Well, this is Fomenko's work, and he says that the biblical Jesus Christ was a Byzantine emperor, born in Crimea in 1152. And died in 1185, age 33. Buddha, St. George, Apollo, Pythagoras, Genghis Khan, Rurik, and Alexander the Great were replicas of his image without existence in real life. Possibly, but Genghis Khan, according to my research, was a Tartarian Tsar, a Russian Tsar. So I'm not quite sure that I'm on board, but I do follow the logic. Now, number 13 is very important because, you know, it starts with what if. The church has created a wrong solar system theory and blessed all the W's and heinous crimes to kill the human spirit. There is no what if, in my opinion. And when I say my opinion, this comes from, 30,000 hours of research, and I am not exaggerating. There is no what if. The church created the wrong solar system theory, which is why 1,000 years was added to the calendar in 1582. It's why the letter J was added to the English language in 1524. So all this stuff was going on shortly after the invasion, which happened in the 15th century, the end of the 15th century. And now we're going slightly into the 16th century, when the calendar was changed, 1582. Solomon's Temple is the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. It's the city initially called Yoros, Jerusalem, Troy, and Constantinople is the true Rome. Yeah. Again, this has been shown by many, many, many researchers. You there, Karen?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to make sure, like I have this habit of getting kicked off. So what if there were no ancient Greek and Roman Empire? Well, again, we're talking about, as far as my research is concerned, we're talking about the invasion, the invaders coming across the sea. And we know that the Russian emperors were known as a Tsar. And there are two spellings, Tsar or Czar. Either, doesn't matter, it's the same pronunciation. But then we're told that the head of the Roman Empire was called Caesar. Well, if we break that down, Caesar, the Tsar of the sea, the boss of the sea, and the people were called Romans, Roman, men who rowed boats, R-O-W-E-D. The Roman, the Romen were governed by the Tsar of the sea, the Caesar or the Caesar. It's all there, right there in the language. What if, okay, so if the worldwide rock-carved megaliths are mere Tartarian created concrete, which, as was spoken about earlier, becomes more resistant over the centuries. There's 30 of these, Karen, so I don't want to dwell too much.
Well,
Number 15.
Can read them, okay? Because obviously they've been up and we've been talking, so maybe people will read them quicker. So where do you want to go?
Well, yeah, they can just pause the video.
15. Do number 15. It's got the Tsar of Russia in it.
Yeah. Okay, so number 15. What if the history of Great Britain was stolen from the Tartarian history so that the insignificant island would acquire the brilliance it never possessed? There's no what if. It did. If the perfidious Albion was a land of thieves and pirates, if George VI was the dead Duke of Clarence and was crowned 2 times with different names.
Yes, I saw it, didn't I? Look, he was the Tsar and the King. Yes!
Yeah.
It's obvious, but a lot of people don't realise that they're looking at the same man. Only when you look at it, people think he's exactly the same man.
Yeah, and this is exactly what you were talking about a couple of weeks ago. If the Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, the guy that we did the hangout on, the guy with the wooden leg, was his brother who fled to London after being, quote unquote, by the Bolsheviks. If they were both children of Roosevelt, 2 times president of the US under different names. What if the Bible was written in the 19th century? Yeah. If the 40 years of Moses in the wilderness were the years in which the treasurers, subordinate to the Serbian Tartar Aryan rulers, were confined as punishment for usury and robbery crimes committed against the Great Tartarian Empire. What if some German Dutch merchants and imperial financial agents had rebelled against Great Tartaria and decided to create countries, mafias, and monarchies? where they could reign and enslave the rest of the world, calling themselves the chosen ones. So what you're talking about here, potentially, is biblical fallen angels. You're talking about Tartarian people, benevolent Tartarian people who went rogue. They rebelled against Great Tartaria and decided to create
this
countries.
This is the parallel universe that we're living in.
Yes.
If this guy is right, which seems to fit into a lot of what I've been saying, then this is the parallel universe. This is the universe that continues while they give us a pretend one.
Yes. Well, as I say, most of the points in what we're going through here are from Natalie Fomenko. But there are connections that can be made, biblical connections, and he's made loads of biblical connections. But there's some that he hasn't. Now, I'm just throwing it out there that these rebels against Great Tartaria, well, if Great Tartaria was some kind of utopia, was some kind of heaven, was some kind of just beautiful society, as we, you know, as the real history that we're discovering.
We're the baddies.
Well, not we, but
not
what
individually. I mean, our lying gov and mates.
Yeah, we're descended from the baddies. Yeah, so what this is, in my opinion, what this is kind of talking about is some German Dutch merchants and imperial financial agents had rebelled against Great Tartaria and decided to create for themselves countries, mafias, monarchies, where they could reign and enslave the rest of the world, calling themselves the chosen ones, enlightened ones, and elected ones. You know, could that be a reference to the fallen angels falling from heaven? You know, somebody left a comment on my channel the other day about the word heaven. And I said, well, heaven can be, you know, just a beautiful place. It doesn't have to be, you know, somewhere up there in the clouds. Remember, I can't remember who it was, that singer. Heaven is a place on earth. I mean, heaven can be just a beautiful place or a beautiful situation, a beautiful feeling. We can describe, the holiday we had, that was heaven. You know, that experience we had was heaven. But we're indoctrinated to believe or think that heaven is up there in the sky. So where I'm coming from here is that these imperial financial agents rebelled against Great Tartaria. Well, if Great Tartaria was such a beautiful place, could it not be described as heaven? And if they rebelled against heaven, could they not be
Atlantis? Still, it's all probably Atlantis. The whole thing was Atlantis.
Yeah. But again, you know, they rebelled. They took sides with the Atlanteans. They sold out. They sold their souls, or however you want to dress it up. What I'm saying is, the first thing that jumped out and hit me when I read that was, could these be metaphorically the quote-unquote biblical fallen angels? Yeah, I think they could. Let's move on. What if history...
Number 21.
I'm on number 18. You're way ahead of me.
I thought you were moving on. All right. You said you weren't going to read them all. Anyway, go on.
No, I just want to get through them a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time.
1870, and the next one's about Joseph Stalin.
Well, number 18 talks about what if history is an intricate novel written and performed by very strange people. It is. You know, and all these questions.
All then, Nigel, are you going to read to 30?
I'm going to go through them all. Yeah, I'm going to go through them all, because a lot of them are pertinent to what you have been showing. What if these people are in contemporary photographs using old clothes and other disguises to fabricate non-existent historical characters and ghostly families? What have you been just showing in your last few videos, Kaz? Exactly that. Can you see how it all comes together?
Also, they took the videos I've been showing that there were much darker people in there, and they tried to take them out.
Yeah, but when you look at the fingers and when you look at the anomalies in some of those photographs,
people have been writing on Facebook. It's all to do with pixelation, and they were old. They didn't realise in the 1800s they had the technology to change it. They could do it all in the 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it might not be that
So,
they do it now. They did these 1800 ones in the I don't know 1910 or something. I don't know, but they changed it years ago.
mm-hmm. Number 19. Let's just go to the last sentence. If Prince Albert was the tycoon in Cecil Rhodes, Teddy Roosevelt, and Queen Victoria was Henry John Temple, 3rd Viscount Palmerston. Now, Queen Victoria has never sat well with me. When I look at photographs of, or supposed photographs of Queen Victoria, you know, I mean, I'm not actually sure that Queen Victoria was a woman.
She had very dark-skinned children.
Yeah, but you know, she doesn't look that feminine to me.
Well, that makes sense then, if that's true.
Now, people can read number 20 themselves. I want to move on to 21 because this is something that is dear to your heart, Karen, because you've done a lot of work on this. Alexei Nikolaevich, I'm not going to even try and pronounce that word, of the House of Romanov, murdered in 1918 by the Bolsheviks, according to official narrative, has ruled Russia from 1917 to 1980 under the names of Kerensky, Kosygin, and Stalin.
He was murdered, but then he came back as Stalin.
No, murdered in 1918 according to official narrative.
Right. But has ruled Russia from 1917, so it was the same person.
Yeah.
So he went, I'm the Tsar of Russia one day, and the next day he went, I'm Joseph Stalin.
Yeah. Who knows?
But then he was the King of England.
Yeah. I know. This is so off the charts. It's crazy.
He wasn't King of England till about 1920, something like that. His dad ruled for about 10 years.
Well, again, according to the official narrative. Now,
but we do know they like playing double parts, don't they? If Crosby can be Hitler and all that. What a horrible scene they've made for us.
Oh God, yeah.
You know what I put in a video last night? My dad, it's not that my dad's in love with Hitler that way. He liked what Hitler was. He liked his structure. He liked the fact that he thought that he'd made so much industry. He just was awed by Hitler. He might not be a real person. Oh my God.
There's a really, really good documentary that you can watch on YouTube. It's about I can't remember if it's 3 hours or 6 hours, but it's all broken down into like 20-minute segments, so it's quite easy to watch when people have time. And it's called The Greatest Story Never Told, and it's all about the untold story of Adolf Hitler. I watched about 4 hours of it a couple of years ago, over a month, and it's actually very, very interesting. Now let's move on to 22. What if Einstein, Pointer, Faraday, Marconi, Hertz, and Maxwell, amongst many others, were characters played by some grey men who destroyed the existing high technology of Tartaria? Now, without actually typing in Albert Einstein wearing ladies' sandals, if you just go to Albert Einstein and look at go to images and scroll through the images, you will find a photo of Albert Einstein sitting on a wall, and he is wearing ladies' sandals. Yeah. So, number 23, what if all worldwide skyscrapers are secretly collecting and using the free electromagnetic energy?
Many people say that, don't they?
Well, they are, and I've shown it in previous videos where here in China, they're still doing it. I can walk down the street.
The truth. These people built the buildings. There's loads of them all across this plane we live on. Why not just tell us the truth?
Because telling the truth doesn't make them money. You know, I can walk down the street and I'm in a little one-horse town, and I can look at hotels, I can look at tall buildings that have still got the energy collecting devices, and they're not. These are not ancient buildings. These are modern buildings, new buildings, and they've still got the electromagnetic collection devices on the top. I'll get some pictures on my phone and I'll send them to you, and we can put them up on a podcast. And so number 24, this again is not a what if. Obelisks, churches, mosques and cathedrals were extremely old Tartarian power plants for the extraction of clean, free, healthy and wireless electromagnetic energy and the generation of all types of waves, mainly infrasound. There's no what if, in my opinion. What if they were destroyed or endowed with crosses? Yes, they were. They put crosses on top of these buildings when they turned them into churches. 25. What if Tartarian palaces were illuminated more than 700 years before a grey man called Thomas Edison began to deprive mankind of free energy? Well, we can see that if we look at some of the what are known as the expositions, or what were they called? You know, like Crystal Palace and all these expositions that were held all over the world. The one that I sent you a PPT, Karen, about Buffalo, the exposition in Buffalo, and that was all lit up with free energy.
Do you know the one that it doesn't explain in here? It does not talk about the pyramids so far, not really. But anyway, that's another subject. But
the book gets into that a little bit later on.
Right. Okay.
So number 26. What if the highly advanced global? This is Flamenco's work, not Jamie. But let's just take it for what it is. Worldwide civilization of Tartaria has been completely disassembled and later destroyed by the parasites between 1900 and 1940 with DEWs.
Yeah, that's why they destroyed San Francisco.
Yep, 1906.
I put that out on Sun and Moon and on the Unscrambled Channel, and I took a bit of Martin Leakey where he's going, this looks like a war. And the building is disappearing like one of the buildings is disappearing like Building 7.
Yeah, 1906. They called it the
Tower,
the earthquake, the Great Fire. Yeah, no, this was DEWs.
So basically, when the trees are burning inside out, that's them saying, "Look, we're not telling everybody we've got this technology.
Yeah,
just like to, what do you call it? They just like to show us little bits. They're like raising their eyebrows just to let everybody know that they've got it. It wasn't theirs. It's the Tartarians."
Mm-hmm. Now, number 27. You've spoken about this previously. Martin Leake has spoken about it. John Levy's spoken about it. What if the images were later retouched to include false lighting poles and wires? If they populated the ruins with the dead people striding carefree amongst the wreckage? If they inserted the telegraph and cable placards in the photos? In other words, Photoshop. Photoshop's been around since 1850. We've proven that. We've shown it. 28. What if San Francisco was a Tartarian imperial city with more than 10 royal palaces, artificial islands, and a strategic port facing Eurasia and connecting the Americas? It was. 29. What if the parasites who took over world power were made up of hybrid androgynous men and women with adopted children created in laboratories and genetically modified? I think I've got enough evidence. In fact, we'll put a link in the description to my.
They definitely did that bit though. They falsified their deaths to play other characters. They did that.
Yeah. But what we'll do, we'll put a link in the description to go to my webpage.
How did they do it, Nigel? So you've got people like Brad Pitt. He goes out there, hi everybody, I've just made a new film, and they know what's behind them. They know all the lies and what they're involved
Yeah.
in, and they pretend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's pretending. We're living in. It's like being in the Emperor. Oh yes, Majesty, you look beautiful and wonderful. When everybody goes, he's naked. We know it's a lie.
Yeah, the Emperor's new clothes. People say, you know, and I'm sure anybody listening to this will have heard that, you know, many people have said we're living in a matrix, we're living in a simulation, we're living in a computer program, we're living in a movie. I've actually come to the conclusion that we're actually living in a cartoon.
Yes, everybody on the television, Trump, Boris, they are cartoons. It's virtual reality. Nobody's real.
Yeah.
And they've disappeared nice and conveniently right now.
I agree. But there's a really important point that I want to make here, if you don't mind, where it says the parasites that took over the world power were made up of hybrid androgynous men and women. Now, we'll put a link in the we'll put a link below to a page on my friend's website, which is basically my page. I've got all my stuff on there, all my books and that are on there, PPTs. And there's a PPT on there called How Low Would You Go? Now, these are all Dropbox links. You don't have to download it. You can actually view the PPT online. And it shows so many quote-unquote famous people, Churchill, Roosevelt, Ceausescu, one of the Rothschilds, and their wives, quote-unquote wives. And, you know, right up into Mr. and Mrs. You know, who acts? Tsar, who's in charge of...
what people have got to come to terms with is that when you're watching the television, you don't know what sex you're looking at. When it's a man, it's probably a woman, and when it's a woman, it's probably a man. This is what they do. These are their games they play. Everybody is the wrong sex, and people are just not noticing when they say, oh, this is honey, the Adam's apples moving up and down on their throat. It's just I just wish people would do their own research, because if they slowed the footage down and looked at it, just go and take 10 pieces, you'll see that everybody doesn't look right. It's all artificial. We had a beautiful, you know, nature place we lived in, and now we're totally artificial. Plastic.
Yeah. Before we get on to number 30.
What about number 29? Oh, you've done that one, yeah. 30.
Yeah, we're still on 29, and I'm not trying to give it a plug. What I'm saying is that the PPT that I've made called How Low Would You Go? I made 2 years ago, long before, you know, this book's been out like literally a few months. There's also a PPT that I will put on there. It's called Have a Heart, and that's the one that I sent to you a while ago, Karen. We can't show it on the channel, but I'll put it on the website so people can have a look at that as well. Because again, that is very, very important in order to understand the bigger picture. So let's move on to number 30. Now, the first word here is communism. Well, what's the root word of communism?
Common law.
Community. I mean, I live in China, for Christ's sake. I live in a...
Common law.
Yeah. I live in China, for Christ's sake. I've lived here for 6 years. You know, I live in a quote-unquote communist country. And yet, I'd rather be here right now during all this pandemic nonsense. I'd rather be here than anywhere in the West, because just nothing's going on. Nothing's happening. Capitalism, which is soon going to be turned into happy-talism. Socialism and liberalism were all socio-economic theories created to conceal the same form of oppression on the 6 continents. It is. If highly positioned grey eminences acted as Mussolini, Hitler, Lenin and Trotsky in performances which you've shown, Karen, you have demonstrated, but never left the photographic paper, movies, encyclopedias, or the terrain of illusionism to happen in real life. You've shown it.
Mm.
Right. I'm going to stop the book there because this is supposed to be a teaser. And I'm going to shoot over to an email that
Okay, 1 second. I've got to get there. Hang on. I've got to get there. 1 second, everybody. Now, this is a bit of so this hangout has led because Nigel sent me this part of the email, which I was just, oh my God. And I read that. So do you want to read it then? Nigel, you're a better reader than me.
All right. So just to introduce it, I was reading this, the book that we've just been talking about, and I selected a few paragraphs. They're not consecutive in the book. They're from different pages, but I selected these and I sent them to Karen because they kind of connect with some of the stuff that Karen's been putting out on her channel. So again, these are all parts from this same book. And again, as I say, not connected. So the first one, the territories of Canada, United States and Mexico were known as India Superior and were populated by the same people that was wiped out across the ocean during the Russian Revolution in 1917 and the German Revolution of 1918 to 1919. The Russian Revolution alone may have exterminated a 5-decade-long bloodbath that slaughtered 100 million Russian Tartarians.
Awful.
As the old world order Tartarians were eliminated, the new world order Romanovs then divided the imperial territory as Canadian, American, and Mexican lands.
So the Queen had to take over about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Or did she take over? Did she actually? This bit I'm not sure about. Did she take over in the 1500s with all those? What are they called now on the flags? Not what are they called? Not dragons. They're called.
Oh, the Griffins.
The Griffins. There were all these Griffins all going on. I'm thinking, no, that's not right because no one can make the same. Like if you watch any videos on it, watch 10 of them, you'll come out with a different ending on every single one of War of the Roses, and they were backwards and forwards, and then this person came. It was all crazy. I'm wondering whether it actually happened then, and we were in control from then, to be honest. But who knows? This says something.
Well, it's quite possible, but at least we know we can trace it back as far as 1925. Until we've got more evidence, let's just. I suppose we should just stick with that. So
this is why Turkey has the link to England then, because it does.
Yeah.
So basically, we've done something really, 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 really terrible, and you're all going to have to pay me money and keep your mouth shut while we've done what we've done.
Everything's always been money, without a doubt. But it was the New World Order Romanovs that divided the imperial territories, Canadian, American, and Mexican lands. They seized world power and rewrote the history of America, the Americas.
It's called Greenland.
Yeah. Now, this next paragraph I thought was quite interesting. Islam was in America and had a big influence on America because you got a total of 565 names, 484 in America and 81 in Canada of villages, towns, cities, mountains, lakes, rivers, and etc. are etymologically Arabic. They were designated by locals long before the arrival of Christopher Columbus, which is CC, which is 33. We won't go there. Many of these names are, in fact, the same as names of Islamic places. Mecca in India, Medina in Idaho, Medina in New York, Medina in Hazen in North Dakota.
It's Indiana, not, you said something else. It's Indiana. Mecca in Indiana.
Indiana.
They're all to do with America, not other countries. Sorry, Nigel. You're much better reading than me. Yeah.
But you've got all these Medinas: Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, Ontario, Mahomet in Illinois, Mona in Utah are just a few noticeable names. Yeah. Now, paragraph 3, again, interesting. And this is why I picked these out and sent them to you. What's also interesting is that Oriental means Western scholar who studies Islam. according to the book Orientalism by Edward Said, Islam came from the Orient. Additionally, if you read subsection 4 of the Delaware law, it will tell you that the Lenape or Lenape, however you want to pronounce it, Indians were formerly known as the Moors.
Yeah, and Dave Murphy is a Moor. His real name is Dave Moore.
Right. But it was originally spelled M-U-U-R. But the word Lenape or Lenape means we the people. The preamble of the US Constitution. We the people, or true people. You can't make this up. This is factual information that people can go and check for themselves. The facts of the war with the Mongol horde were wiped clean from the pages of the textbook. Sounds a bit like the
Bible, doesn't it? Sounds all like the tribes in the Bible. Which wasn't written thousands of years ago. It was only written recently.
No, and
more recently.
I could do a whole podcast on this. I won't, because it will bore people. But I've got enough evidence to prove and to show that the New Testament was written before, or the biblical New Testament was written before the Old Testament. Right? And then they switched it around because everything's upside down. But the facts of the war with the Mongol horde were wiped clean from the pages of the textbooks of American history, as was the fact of the existence of Moscow Tartaria on the whole. The war between the USA and the remains of the horde continued up until the second half of the 19th century. So we're talking 1850 plus. Alaska was, or which remained Russian for a long time, was bought from the Romanovs by the Americans in 1867. So in 1867, Alaska became a state of America. Prior to that, it was part of Russia. I've also got evidence that Italy did not become a country until 1861. Italy.
Oh, there we are, all looking for this history thousands of years before and trying to work it back up.
Yeah.
What it was 100 years ago. Shame on them.
Well, the NWO became victorious using superior energy weapons to cowardly kill the civilian population.
Yes.
Yeah. Who slept unawares, and to annihilate the star fortresses who defended our coastal cities and islands.
But listen, I put a video out the other day when they were saying that they were energy plants, but they're not. They were forts. They were forts then.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's how they dominated.
They're not energy places, although.
No, they were forts. They were defensive. They were forts. Yeah. That's how they dominated the entire Russian continent, turning some imperial cities of the Rus Federation or Russian Federation to dust, and others into caricatures called universal exhibition.
Can I just say one thing? I don't know if everybody knows, but Russia does not have Google Maps, probably because it's full of Tartaria. And what were they going to do? It's such a big piece of land. They couldn't go in and destroy it all. It would take years. Or maybe that's what they've been doing behind the scenes. So they've probably got star forts and pyramids, and they've got everything there. Yeah.
But there's something like a good friend of mine has got a really good friend who is Russian. And there's something like, I don't know, 258 different dialects in Russia. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, when you think we have 44 accents or dialects in the UK, there are more than 1,600 dialects in China, and in Russia there's something like 258. So, anyway, the next part of this, I put it in bold because this directly related to a very, very recent video that you put out, Karen. In reality, the leaders of the Northern...
The Hussars meant nothing to me. They were Hungarian, Russian, French, they were Lithuanian, they were Prussian, they were English. And now I look at footage and all I can see is the Hussars in them, which they were nothing to me before.
Yeah. It's weird how some of this information can just flip your switch or you make you take a second look. But the so-called Union Army were the first to segregate around 180,000 black soldiers in regiments headed only by white men. These soldiers would have been recruited among African tribes, as this Africa was the first continent to be conquered by the NWO. It was from there.
I put out a video a few weeks ago because it just intrigued me when I saw basically it was their hair, but it looked like the Beefeaters, but they weren't calling it anything like that. So basically, I was even sort of having a bit of not an argument with Russian vids, but basically they were imported. Those people were imported and became the soldiers, which they didn't care whether they were murdered or not, and thousands of them.
Yeah. It's like I'm going to repeat this. It's like I said to you before we came online.
Who are they fighting then? Who are they actually fighting when they did all this? He doesn't say who they were fighting. What? So the black people were beating other black people?
No, it was just a takeover. It's like I said to you before we came online, and people can go and look at this for themselves. There are two paintings, portraits of King Philip of France. Oh, sorry, King Philip of Spain, and one you can clearly see that they're the same dude, but one shows him as being a black person, and the other one shows him as being a white person.
Well, they did that in America, didn't they, with American presidents? 1 minute he's white, then he's black. Like, to do this, we just wanted truth.
But the black portrait of King Philip of Spain predates the white one, only by a few years. But the first one, the important thing to know,
the black people ran everything, and we were all living in harmony wherever we were until this lot did what they did.
Well, yeah, but the last section of this paragraph gives you the reason. It was from there that the parasites stole trillions in gold and diamonds. That's what they wanted. After exterminating all settler entrepreneurs in what historians call the Boer Wars, in the NWO Union Army, blacks could not reach any leadership position and were sent to their deaths without any qualms. It is well known that parasites never fought or stepped on a battlefield.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's happening now, isn't it? Where we've got Trump and Boris, all these videos are coming out, you can't find them, so they're not really here, they're somewhere else, wherever they are.
Yeah.
They're still doing it now, so they're commanding it without being there. And all the little sheeple people are taking it all in and believing it's all real.
Yeah.
Oh, it's disgusting. That really shocked me with the black people about the amount of deaths, but you can't prove that he's right, but that's what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on to the last part. We're gonna wrap up in a second, guys.
Right, I'm there now on the other bit, but yeah, go on then. So whatever that is.
Oh, conquistadors. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of related, but loosely to what we've been talking about. But I still thought it was important to put it out because, as I say, this is a teaser. The conquistadors were sent to the West Indies to destroy the kingdoms of the blacks and reduce them to servitude and slavery. It was known that the Don Diversas, the doctrine of discovery, and the Inquisition gave Catholic kingdoms the right to murder, rape, enslave, and torture all those not under the authority of the Vatican and the Pope. America is the old world, and Columbus called his first voyage the Last Crusade to conquer the Holy Lands of Mexico. And Peru, which means Per Heru, or House of Heru, or Jerusalem.
Jerusalem?
And in a previous podcast, when I was talking about that Masonic book, that word is there, Jerusalem. It's also spelt with an I, H-I-E-R, Higher Jerusalem, which became Jerusalem, and is also known as the navel of the world.
You can actually see now why they don't believe Jesus has been. I used to think, how can he be born there? But they don't believe he's been.
Well, I think it's important or curious that Jerusalem is known as the navel of the world, the belly button, if you like. You know, it's all connected. It's all deception. It's all lies. Teotihuacan means the city of Tahuti or Thoth, the emerald tablets of Thoth, and Tenochtitlan, which became Mexico City, means city of Enoch. Mexico is named for Moses or Meshi, like Moshe.
All these people, when they were doing their stories in the Bible, were in completely different places to where they said they were.
Well, yeah, and Fomenko also goes on to say that the Dead Sea, and you've got to remember that there was some scrolls found in 1947 called the Dead Sea Scrolls, which have been totally debunked as being fake, as has the Book of Enoch, which is not in the Bible, completely fake. But the Dead Sea is actually the Great Salt Lake. It's the same thing.
I want them to pack their bags and go. I don't care where they go. They can go to space for all I care. They can go to the moon if they want. Put them in a rocket and send them off. Yeah.
They got to go. They really do have to go. We've put up with this shit for long enough. We've put up with this shit for 500 years or more.
Right. Nigel, have you finished that then? Have you finished that page? Because I'll go back to the Hangout and it says love you. So love you too, Nigel, and thank you for that very much.
Yeah.
Just go back to the Hangout.
Yeah, I've finished that. Yeah.
Right, go on then, Nigel.
What do you want me to say now? What have I missed?
Nothing. You've done very well at reading all that out. It's just brilliant to see that some of the things that I've been saying through my own research, and sometimes I don't even know why I said them. I just knew that something happened. It had to have happened. I think that, like you said, 1400s, late 1400s, all around there with the griffins and all that, something happened then. And then something happened in the 1800s, maybe about the mid 1800s. That's when that happened with mud flooding and stuff like that. And when they came out of it, so many years later, I don't know why they waited so long to put their next regime in. But lying about Hitler, like making us afraid of all that. I mean, the amount of stories my dad used to watch about the Second World War and the concentration camp. I had to funnel that into people to make them believe that that's what happened when it didn't. They were just taking our children. I've got pictures up on one of my videos where they're supposed to be, prisoners, and they're modelling hats and things. I mean, if you're going to be put in a gas chamber, why would you be modelling hats? I'm not saying they were the nicest places to be. I'm not saying that they didn't put them in there and they weren't some kind of camp. They weren't what they told us they were. It was like, so why did they pick on the Jewish people then? Or was that just another screen for them?
Well, they want us to think or believe that it's a race of people. It's not. It's a religion. It really is a chosen.
And you know that the religion's in on it because none of the churches have been open for the people right now. I'm sorry if the churches can't be open. I know it's a pandemic and all that kind of stuff, but the churches needed to remain open, right? And they're closed because they're in with the government. It's disgusting.
Well, there's actually two sides to that, Karen. I mean, I don't want to come across like I'm arguing the point, but because you're right, you're totally right. But it has been said by several people that if you are a Buddhist or you are a New Ager or you are whatever, then you're free to go and do whatever you want to do. But if you are a Christian Catholic, you are a Jesus worshipper, then you can't go and do your thing because the churches are closed. So there is something behind that. I believe there is something behind that, even though I think, I don't think I know.
They need it because obviously some of these big cathedrals and that, they were looking at the stars and everything with the Tartaria, but then the churches took them over. And so they've had to lie in with the government because it's all part of their game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There weren't all these churches and that. I'm not saying that maybe people weren't in some way religious or believed in something, but the churches weren't what they said they were. This is like a horror movie. We're in a dream. We're in like,
Oh,
I said, two
yeah.
realities here. There's this reality, and then there's the fake reality they've got us in.
Yeah.
You need to turn that television off. Please, turn the television off. Nobody watch the television. It is doing something to the people. It's making you into narcissists. It's making you believe the lies. Just turn it off. Your life will pick up greatly when you turn it off.
You know,
Start talking to each other. Me and Nigel, right, we do have hangouts, but all we do is talk to each other. We don't have a television on. Well, we don't, do we?
No, we don't. But for the benefit of the guys listening to this, Karen and I are going to do another hangout, and hopefully we're going to get James in as well, which will be the third part of our Waking Up series. We've done part 1, part 2, and part 3 will be called Understanding This Realm. I'm still working on content. I've got a lot of content, but I've just got to kind of put it all together.
Do you believe the winged ones? I mean, I do believe that you can see hussars everywhere with the head, the hats on. But do you believe the winged ones? They only come from Lithuania, those ones.
Yeah, of course.
Why were they so different to the others?
Oh. We don't really have time to go into that right now, because you'll just keep me going for another half an hour. But I just want to make a quick point. In relation to what you just said about TV.
It's really important because they're so different to the other hussars.
Yeah.
Just in a sentence, roughly.
Well, they are hussars, but they're not the same. It's like we see people who are wearing masks and sticking out their arms, going, "Come on, give it me, give it me, give it me." They look the same as we do, but they're not the same. It's kind of the same thing, but in a different...
Well, I think if one of those came up to me, I'd go, "Okay, I surrender." The size of those things with wings on, they'd look twice as big as they were. I surrender.
Well, actually,
they were horses, and they were. That's the only thing I don't get, is that we were so far advanced. Why is everybody on horses?
Well, look, before I let this comment of yours go, which was about turning off your TVs, people need to remember that everything that they're doing, they tell us. Now, I don't think that... There's a lot of people out there that will go, "Oh, they have to tell us it's karma." No, I don't believe that for a second. I think they tell us because of narcissism. I think they are the most narcissistic people you've ever even dreamed of meeting.
Horrible if you're an empath.
Yeah.
All that narcissism.
Yeah.
All those people, they're a different type of people. My last boyfriend was one. What he did to me, the way he treated me, what they think, they don't care about you at all. Whereas an empath, I care about people. I care about lots. I can't help it. It's in me to be like that.
Yeah. So let me make a suggestion. Let me drop something into your head. Remember the movie Poltergeist?
Yeah.
Where did the entity come from? They're here.
Mm.
Now, go on. They're here. Where did the entities come from? They came from the TV screen.
Oh, right, yeah. Because that's where Saw is. Saw.
Yeah.
She's in the television. She gets out of the television.
Yeah. The little girl looking at the TV screen, which was all fuzz, it was all white noise. They're here. They were coming out of the TV screen. That was a truth drop. That was a huge truth drop back in the 70s. They're telling you that the nonsense, the BS, the lies.
Something. I do understand that the films, and all of them, we've got the Adjustment Bureau, we've got Arnie going to, what was that, Total Recall, you've got the Truman Family. It's great. They give out true things. Even the one you were talking about, Space Odyssey, all those. But the people in them are playing loads of parts and are them. So what's that telling you then?
Well, that's the whole truth drop. The whole truth drop is that
they're laughing at us. They laugh
Yeah.
at us by making the truth and going, ha ha ha, they'll never get it.
Yeah. But what they're doing, Karen, is they're laughing at us because they know that 95% of the population are addicted to television or television.
This is why you cannot vote for these people. I know it seems, what does it mean if you don't vote? There's thousands of other votes, supposedly, or they'll lie and they'll fix it. I cannot vote for that system anymore. It's evil.
The people that we see on TV, the people that people worship, adore, their favourite actor, their favourite singer, their favourite politician, they've never met them. They've only ever seen them on television, television.
Do they really exist, all these people? We only know them on the television. Well, and I told you, when Trump won the election, he was supposed to have walked, not this time, last time, he was supposed to have walked through the streets of London, New York. But it was the same thing again. None of the crowds were real. He never walked through New York. He never did it. They made it up. How do we know that he's even real or alive? We don't know. All you're looking at is lookalikes. They've only got to put a stocking over their head. I didn't believe in this, but the stockings, they're like the thickness of a balloon. So you can stick one of those on and go out with somebody else. Like when they said, it took us 2 years to make that film, probably 6 months to make the film and a year and a half making more lies for us.
Well, yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make is that
when Tom Hanks says, it took me 2 years to make that film, it was 6 months making the film and a year and a half doing all the other films that he's in, or the other documentaries, or the other people he plays in the government, or whatever it is. They're all doing other things.
Well, yeah. But the point that I'm trying to make is when you go back to the Poltergeist movie, when the entity, they're here, comes through the TV, what they're basically telling us is that our whole reality, or for the most part,
we're coming to get your soul.
Yeah, but it's all coming through the TV. The people that we look up to, the people that certain people worship, these TV stars, the movie stars.
They're not just actors. Because they play multiple roles and because they're lying to us. I mean, why not just tell us the truth? It's so complicated and dirty. Why use actors? They're not actors. They're obviously other people. They're obviously military officers who play actors, and they go, like, for instance, Will Ferrell. He's the bass player in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, whatever they're called, the Chili Peppers. Yeah. He's the bass player in that. So they play musicians, they play actors. It makes me want to vomit.
I think the whole point is, and the more I think about it, the more I think that scene in Poltergeist, they're here, coming through the TV, was telling us, those few seconds were giving us so much information.
There's another film, The Saw. She gets out of the television as well. I think it's not The Saw. There's another one. I can't remember what it's called now. She gets out of the television.
But again, that's another truth drop. What they're basically telling us is that 95% of our quote-unquote reality comes from TV. We believe everything we see on the TV.
But why would they want to do this, Nigel? Why not just tell us the truth that 100 years ago, people would accept the truth, accept history. It's history. We can't change it, but it totally lied to. So now we're living in like a dual life. There's what really happened and what's really going on, and then the plastic they give us.
Well, because telling the truth doesn't make money. It's all about advertising. We live in a commercial realm. Everything is to do with commerce. We spoke about this at length many, many times. I don't like the company you keep. Mind your own business. Everything is related to commerce.
We'd rather know the truth. We all want to know where we came from, who we are, where we are. We want to know that.
Well, we do. You and I do, and the people listening to this do. But I've got friends and family that really and truly don't care. They're totally focused on their
they
job.
don't care. But that happens, I think, when you get older, because we've already talked. When you're younger and you've got children and families, it is a little bit hard to spend hours and hours of your life researching stuff when they're going, "I want my dinner," and "Oh, have you done the laundry?" Your mind is kept quite concentrated on other things. It's when you get a little bit older, when your children have grown up a bit, then it gives you time to research and look at this stuff. And I looked at the ages of the people that are coming to the channel, and they're all about, say, 40 to 55, that age group, which then obviously a lot of children have grown up and people can do their own research. Because obviously when you get older, you obviously want to look at it more when you're younger.
Well, before my previous channel got taken down, I had 3.6 or 3,600 subscribers. And when I looked at the analytics, they were pretty much between 45 and 55. And they were 49, 51% male, female. So I figured
I've got more men. Would you believe it? More men, about 65, 70% of the people that come to Sun and Moon are men. And there's about nearly 40% are women. And and over half of them are American. Over half of the people that come to my channel are American.
Oh, I think something like 87% of my subs on my channel before it got taken down were American. But it gave me a little bit of...
that's what surprises me, because Melody from the Hangout last night, she talks about the fact that obviously they want to take the GUNSs away. And that's why I'm so surprised that the Americans are not standing up. They're the most aware of all of us. There's more of them aware than anywhere else. And they're just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah. I've got to agree with you there.
At least we're marching here. It might not be much marching, but in the UK, people marching. People are upset here. In America, you don't hear any of that. Obviously, you can see the videos here. They put them out on YouTube. But in America, they seem to be doing nothing. Come on, America.
Well, I also, I think I told you yesterday, I also saw a video where 215 million people in India were protesting. Now, of course, they didn't.
Because I think a lot of these people do not have the technology we have. Well, what technology is a television and a mobile phone. But because less of them have them, those people talk a lot more. And what I noticed was anybody living here that's not English or is visiting here, living here, they're all awake. But the English people are asleep.
I agree.
That live here aren't. They're all awake. The Turkish, whatever it is, whenever I went out in London, they were much more aware. But the English people think, "Oh, get away from me, Satanist." Whereas the foreign people said, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah.
So that's what that
was. I was actually quite happy. The last time I looked at the analytics, which was a couple of months ago, and they took my channel down like 3 weeks ago. But I was quite happy when I saw that the audience were pretty much 45 to 55, and it was almost a 50-50 split, male and female. And I kind of thought to myself, Nigel, you're doing something right here, because you're hitting the audience that you want to hit, and you're not dominated by males or females or whatever. You've got pretty much of a 50-50. So to me, that gave me some encouragement that what I was putting out was doing the job, and it was hitting the right audience. And then, of course, they decided that...
Yeah, but they've taken two of my channels, Nigel. They took the original Unscrambled, and they've taken the original Sun and Moon, and I had 16,000 subs with that, so they don't care. The moment they think you're putting out too much truth, they take you. But we have been going for an hour and 45 minutes. Do you think that this is just a teaser, guys?
Yeah. Wait till we get into the real stuff, guys.
Anyway, Nigel, thank you very much for beautifully reading out all that information for everybody, and I hope everybody takes in. We can't prove whether the book's right, but it fits into a lot of what I've worked out myself. So Nigel, thank you very much for your time and for reading out. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's nice when you find yourself in a position that you've gone out and done your own research. And let me just finish by saying, or reminding people about what Gary said, your friend Gary, when he watched our, I think it was the first podcast we did on the Mandela effect and so on and so forth, that went on for like 3 hours. And he said he was totally glued to it because all the research that he did, once he listened to what you and I were talking about.
Well, that point, Nigel, was the fact that it was for him to say, well, I don't have to try and prove it to anybody anymore. I don't have to try and wake people up anymore. You're either going to get it or you're not, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, but it was also nice that him listening to you and I just dribbling, and that's all we were doing. The fact that he joined so many dots and it filled in so many gaps that he got missing jigsaw pieces and so on and so forth. So, you know, if that is what we can do, you know, if people listening to us don't just take on board everything we say, if they go out and do their own research and then listen to the stuff that you and I talk about, it just cements. Yeah, God, yeah, I knew I was right, and that's why, you know, we've done this.
Let's just hope for the next few years before it's too late that more books like this come out, or other people just work it out that it's and I don't know how we don't, you know, maybe that's what a revolution's about. I don't know whether revolutions are used. Oh, let's stick a revolution in there while we're doing something else. It just covers up history. That's what I think revolutions do.
Yeah,
because they just do. But you know, something needs to change. The spiritual people need to come forward. I just don't know how we do it. Don't want wars. Don't want any more of that. We're peaceful people. That's why they could lock us down overnight for 6 months without one police officer or one soldier.
Well, California's been locked down again today.
Oh my God.
Mm.
We're going to finish now, Nigel. We're going to finish now.
Okay, can I just say one more thing, just to the people listening?
Go on
then. This podcast, this hangout, was supposed to be a teaser for this book. I don't want to ask Karen to put the link in this hangout. I just need to contact Jamie and say, I mean, yes, it's a free book, but I just want to contact him and say, look, is it okay? We're going to go through your book on a few hangouts.
People can go and find it then, can't they? If they want to read it before they get a copy.
Well, I'd like to get you to put the link in the description, but I kind of think that I should just check with Jamie first and make sure that
we're ready to look all over the internet. Anyway, thank you very much to him as well for his history there, and
absolutely.
Anyway, thank you, Nigel. Thank you, chat room.
More than welcome.